Hello, my name's Ken Jones from Circular Software. I've been asked to upload a video version of the presentation I did earlier this month at Digital Book World in September 2019. So my presentation was entitled The MasterPlan, Creating and Securely Delivering Rich Digital Publications to Every Device and Desktop. So I started off with a couple of examples, light-hearted examples of what the problems currently are that face how we can deliver ebooks to customers. So trying to find a book in a bookstore, imagine if this was a typical bookstore, and when you find the book that you want, then you have to go jumping through hoops in order to be able to actually get to the file. Also, there are problems with how we can sell the books. So if someone finds a book in your bookstore, it's quite typical that we then send them somewhere else to go and buy books alongside lots of cheaper books from all our competitors. And too much of the time we only get to see the front cover, and if we're talking about illustrated publishing, then there's such a shame to not be able to see inside the book and only show people the cover all the time. So these are the sort of things I'm trying to solve in this presentation, and I've got lots of ideas and some products to tell you about at the end. So if we could search inside the book as well as see inside the book, then wouldn't that be marvelous? And we could do that all in a place that we invite people to, and then we know who they are. We can start to have membership, or the idea of mailing lists, or just being able to build a community around the people that are coming to us to see our books. So the problem is getting digital pages to readers. There are some barriers to do that. So if we imagine the book is on the left and the reader is on the right, then straight away, typically to get an ebook to somebody, there has to be a device, some way of getting the book onto a screen. And if we have a particular device, then we need to think, what sort of device? Obviously mobile is massive and everywhere. We need to think about that, but we shouldn't necessarily constrain ourselves to the limitations of a very tiny screen. If we get the opportunity to have tablets or laptops or even larger screens, then we should cater for that. Maybe a complementary publication that could be mobile friendly but also adapts to a larger screen. Wouldn't that be great? So first of all, a barrier is knowing what device we are on, and that in turn means what operating system are we on. So as we all know, there are a selection of different types of operating system that different devices run on. So we need to think about that confusion as well. And in 2019, there is still a real problem getting a illustrated and an interactive publication to people on Android and people on Windows. So these are some of the real life problems. So the reader, and in this case I mean the reading system, not the person reading the book. So the reader is also tied into the operating system and the device. So here are a selection of different types of reader you may have come across. So we're already in trouble. We have a disparate amount of ways to read on different devices and different operating systems, and this sort of just makes it really hard to get our book, and as you can see, it's getting further and further away from our reader. The stores and the retailers are how people receive their content, so they are also in charge of how to find the content. So for example, Apple have a great reading system, but I hear from publishers that it's not always the easiest place to find their publications. Even if you know that their publication is available on Apple Books, sometimes it's really hard to actually find it. So finding and also then being able to purchase the book and how to then download and retrieve that book is all tied into that retailer. So retailers have different readers on different devices and different OSs, and they have different capabilities, and we're tied into the retailer because they are the ones that are protecting the content. It's very important, obviously, especially in trade publishing, to be able to restrict the unwanted sharing of our content. So being able to tie into a system that applies some DRM, some digital rights management, to stop the sharing of content, means that we're tied into the reader and the retailer. Okay, what else is up? The format. So different formats for different retailers. So EPUB is a marvelous format, which is an open standard. Unfortunately, Amazon, the largest retailer of ebooks, doesn't natively use EPUB. They may accept EPUB, but they will convert it to their own AZW3 or KF8 format. So some publishers have decided to try and publish their own content in native web code, so HTML5. That can also lead to problems if you don't have a sort of an enclosing package format. Then how are we going to actually deliver this structured content? So different formats are another thing we need to think about. And then finally, submitting the format that you've made to the store. There's another process there. Books can be rejected. Books have to have perhaps additional things added or removed from them in order to work with different reading systems. So there's quite a lot of barriers between our reader and the publication. So the creation, the distribution and the consumption of this content has been a struggle. Let's have a look at some solutions. So the web is a great thing. It's quite popular. You may have heard of it. Being able to use the web to solve some of the problems of how we can get things to our readers. Let's have a look how we could do that. By removing the reader in terms of the reading system, and therefore the operating system and the device, if we can publish to the browser, and the browser is cross-platform, it will work on every device. Every modern browser will work on every modern device. By using the web as our way to actually convert the web browser into a reading system itself, we've solved the problem of being able to get our content to a particular person on a particular device, rather than saying you need this particular hardware, or you also need this particular software, and you need this particular operating system. By using the web as our way to distribute the content, we've solved some major things there, and we're getting closer for the reader to the book. Think of the web as a different way to control access to something. So some large companies are doing rather well with that concept, that when you need something, you can be online and you can get to that content. If you do need to be offline, then there is a way to securely retrieve it to a temporary offline experience. So access control, rather than purchasing a particular document and downloading it to a particular device, is something that's made possible by the modern web. So rather than thinking about getting a file, how about we think about just being able to access it at the time that we want it? So that would also remove the problems of getting that file. So we're getting closer. And which format? So the web is we don't need to use the Amazon format, which is frankly quite poor. It doesn't support a lot of the interactive things that we want. So let's get rid of the Amazon format and concentrate on EPUB. Anything we want to do in HTML, we can already do in EPUB, because EPUB is actually based on HTML. So I'm a big fan and a believer in what EPUB can do. It's already a format that does what we need. We just need the support around this format. But there's also another format that I think is very important, especially for books which have already been published perhaps years ago, the PDF. So having a PDF, it's very easy to make PDFs. Any application that can print can also PDF. So most publishers will have the PDFs for most of their content that's been published in perhaps the last 10 or maybe 15 or 20 years. Has been we have a way to get to the PDF, even if it's a really old book that was never digitized. We could actually have ways to scan them and to bring them into PDF. So it's in a way we have a digital format that caters for everything, and we have the in the PDF, and we have a more modern format that caters for everything we want to do in the future with EPUB. And we can be with either of those formats on the web. So having those formats, then that removes that formatting problem. So we're getting closer still. So now we've just need to think about submitting. Submitting can be very easily secured and automated with the web. It's all about transferring data. So submitting is another thing we really don't need to be restricted by on the web. So now, finding and buying the book. So finding the book, there's still going to be challenges for publishers to get their content to be found, but the web is all about searching and linking to content. So by using the web in order to find and to share content, there are lots of different ways, and here are just some that we know about, to share our content. And not just social media, but also chat and email still is a very important way to share content. So being able to share our content online is already solved in many ways. So being able to find, it just now leaves us the question of how people will actually consume it. And a lot of publishers, perhaps non-traditional publishers, are not trying to sell their content, and just by getting people to be able to find their content and consume their content, that is job done for them. That's what they want to achieve. But obviously for a lot of the type of customers that I work with, they are trade publishers, or they need to sell their content. So as I was saying before, let's think of it, rather than purchasing and buying a particular piece of content, let's think of it as controlling the access to that particular piece of content. So I've turned it around, and the user at the bottom may have access to a particular piece of content if we allow, at a certain time, a certain user to access a certain piece of content. We still control the access, but we allow access to a particular person. We identify them, and we identify the title or the publication that they need to access. Now, what if we have lots of different people, and perhaps lots of different books as well? Well, individuals can have access control switched on and off via the web to individual publications, or not. We can stop the access in a controlled way. So people could perhaps consume things for a while. They could have a month's subscription to access a content, or they could have a lifetime subscription if you wanted to control that. But individually we can say who can access which content, and we can switch that on and off as we wish, because we're not delivering the file to the user, we're allowing access to the file by that user. So this person has got access to that, or they may have access to multiple files, or not. We could switch that off. Or we could remove the access control. We still have it there, but basically we're allowing access of multiple users to multiple titles, or in fact the same user to different titles. And let's have a think about actually inside the book. Now we're allowing access to particular titles. Let's go a bit further, and rather than just saying, here you are, you've got access to the whole publication, it could be a magazine or a book, etc. This person has access to all the pages. Or maybe we would want to do it like this way. Lock down some of the content and allow access to just some of the content for an individual user or for all users. So access control could be limited to individual users or groups of people. So it can be limited down to the person. It could be limited to the publication. It could be limited to the page or the section or the chapter within that publication. It could be limited to the place that publication is appearing. So it could be on certain websites, certain people can see certain pages. The access control would work like that. And also it could be time-based. So to the minute or to the second, you could say these people have access to these publications on these sites for this amount of time. So maybe not just one publication, but lots of publications. If you have lots of people with access to lots of publications and in a controlled way without access control, then as this person comes in to find their content, very much they do need to be able to find it, so they need to be able to search it. So I've added a search here. We would like to have better search. So how about with the power of the modern web, we can search inside the books, and not just inside an individual book like we can with traditional ebooks, but search across all the books. We want to find direct links into the books and into the page. So this allows for better discovery, and it could allow for people to search, but then know that the content is there, but not necessarily automatically have the content. You want people to find the content, but you don't necessarily want to give that content away. So we could allow search only. So for example, this person has searched for some content and they've had a few different hits. And as soon as we can quickly show the content and the place where the file has been searched, the content has been found, then the sooner the better. You want people to find your content as quickly as possible. So in this case, this person has found this piece of content on this particular spread, and currently that spread has been locked. Perhaps the rest of the content has been opened up for samples or for people to be able to find this and share this. But if they've actually found a piece of content on a locked page, wouldn't it be great if we could just temporarily unlock that page, maybe for an hour, maybe for the day? And we could say for that person, we could remove the restrictions of access control for this particular spread, and then allow that particular spread that this person is obviously interested in finding, and once they've found it, being able to securely share it in a controlled way, so people can come back and be brought to the position where this publication is and consume it right there in the web. That would be the best way, I think, to be able to share and search our content. So think of it as we don't have to wait for a publication to download, because we instantly have it, have access to the part of the publication that we drop into. Therefore, there's no need for restricting that particular piece of content as it travels to the user's device, because that's not how we are delivering the content. We're allowing streaming of the content, and therefore we're controlling the access to the content. The content stays centrally on the web, and we allow access to that. So we don't have the need for DRM, which is causing a lot of the problems, as I talked about earlier, locking us into particular devices and particular retailers and reading systems. It also means it's faster to receive. If they found the content that they want on page 50, let them see page 50 as fast as we can. We don't have to wait for them to receive the prior 49 pages or the whole 200 pages of that particular title. Let's just get them into the content. And then we can restrict individual pieces of content very easily. So we can allow different parts of a publication to be opened up to different people in many ways. And that content could actually, if you get the idea that we're actually serving the content on demand, then it's a lot easier to actually start to change the content as well. Maybe you want to update the content. Maybe you want things, not just errors, but also new content could be added into a publication. So the content could be adapted. So individual pages may update. whilst this individual reader has access to this. The URL, the link to this book, doesn't need to change. They still find the content in the right place, but the content may be updated as we are streaming it instantly. And that means we could also alter what it is that the reader is experiencing. Maybe they want to read this publication in a different language. That would just be a switch to change the language of the content that's being presented. Maybe the person reading it needs to have it at a different level of complexity, maybe because it's a foreign language, or maybe they're still learning to read, so the reading age could be changed. And this means that we could offer different types of publication based on the user, on their requirements. So if they have different accessibility requirements, we could give them something a lot more accessible or more suitable for a smaller device, etc. That's definitely possible. And true personalization, not just putting somebody's name on a page, but actually altering the content, maybe changing the story, or maybe making it more relevant to a particular set of people. Personalization in that way is something that's a lot more possible. Now we have this more flexible streaming way of delivering our content. Also, we could be checking how the reader is consuming that content. If they are on a device that doesn't have sound, or doesn't have color, then we could change what we could tell that from the device, and also we could then give the most relevant content to that particular person on that device. Maybe they're on a small screen and we send them a small screen version of the content, and maybe they're on a slower connection, and therefore we could give them something that they still get to the information whilst they're waiting for perhaps a faster connection, and they would get a more enhanced version. So I hope you like all those ideas. I could stop the video here, and I could have stopped the presentation here, but I wanted to come up with some solutions as well as just ideas. So it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I'm going to proceed to tell you about some tools that I've either developed myself or have found along the way. So I will start to talk about some of my own products at this point. So I'm hoping that you'll stay tuned, and let me show you what I've been working on. So Adobe InDesign is the industry standard page layout program. I think it's very important to have Adobe InDesign still within our workflow. Maybe it's not suitable for everybody, but for a lot of the illustrated publishers particularly that I am working with, InDesign is a core piece of software, and we need to work with that. So I've developed a software called Greenlight, which works alongside InDesign. So it can adapt how files are set up and also how files are exported. So the Greenlight software has got already 10 e-production, so tools for digital production preparation. So you can see they're sort of split into two. Tools to help with some of the accessibility problems that we get from InDesign, and trying to better prepare our content, and also for the export to EPUB. So things like adding page markers, so we have a better way to drop into the page at a certain time, and this can be for reflowable EPUBs as well as fixed layout EPUBs. So page markers, alt tags, so being able to better add and more quickly add in alternative text for all the images in our content. Aria roles is another one. So I was lucky enough to work with Kevin Callahan and Laura Brady on some of the ideas around this, and this is a nice quote that Laura put up on the EPUB Secrets site. So being able to use these tools to massage the InDesign content is something that I'm very keen on doing more of. And all the Greenlight e-production tools are free, so something to check out. Also, Tumult Hype is another program that I'm very keen on. I'm a big fan of what it can do. So it's a way for visual design, sort of graphic designers to be able to create some interaction and also some complex animation in a way that you would want to drop that into an EPUB. So being able to use another tool of mine, Circular Flow, we have a way to drop in widgets and web code and things made in Hype onto the page. So here are some tools to do just that. So the web code and widget tools can drop in pieces of web code, and PDF tools to work with PDFs straight away. And also we've got a lot of read aloud tools. So it's another feature that's missing from InDesign, but what we put into the InDesign document with Circular Flow is a way to have media overlays, as they're called. It's the text highlighting at the pace of a recorded audio. So read aloud tools are actually very popular in Circular Flow for what they can bring to an otherwise sort of static InDesign document. Here's a nice quote on Circular Flow. So Kids Can Press are a Canadian publisher. I think I can actually show you some of their content in a moment that they've used Circular Flow to create. Oh, another quote. So placing in web code was mentioned here. So that was a few simple clicks to actually drop in a piece of web code onto the page. Now there is another couple of other things I want to show you, but I've already made another video for another presentation I did at the Digital Publishing Summit, so I'll put a link to that presentation into this, and you'll see a lot of what's possible within Galdo's Gift. Galdo's Gift by Topocata is a marvelous example of what is possible with fixed layout EPUB. And so do check that out and have a look at the other video where I go into more detail on that. And also what I called, slightly tongue-in-cheek, OMGPub. So rather than a typical EPUB, an OMGPub is a way to get super sort of enhancements, so audio, video, animation, read aloud, quizzes, puzzles, and even VR into the EPUB format. So it's still an EPUB, but it's a souped up EPUB. It's still a valid fixed layout EPUB, but it's something that is really sort of showing off. I think I managed to get 30 or more different examples of what is possible in EPUB into the presentation that I did in Paris. So I'll put a link to that too. So remember this. From earlier, we were talking about the difficulties of getting our publications to our readers. Well, all of the tools I've talked about so far in terms of Hype and InDesign and Greenlight and Circular Flow are all the very first column, that formatting column over on the left. And that's what has led me to try and solve everything else. Has taken many years. And it's because of the frustration of there is this great format that is just underserved, that we can't actually get the content to our readers. So the rest of those has been solved with a couple of other marvelous pieces of software. So Calibri Reader is a treat. It's a modern EPUB and also PDF, but think of it as a modern book reader that works in any location. So you can put it into your own application. Or you could use it as online. So the web reading part that I was talking about in my presentation, we've used Calibri Reader as the EPUB rendering engine, that the reading system that is displaying content to our readers. So Calibri Reader are doing marvelous things, and I'm a big fan of what they're doing, and I truly believe that they're going to actually finally solve the problems of getting our accessible and interactive content to our readers. So MasterPlan is the rest. So putting the search and the sharing and the access control around the Marvelous Reading system is what MasterPlan is set up to do. So MasterPlan allows you in to individual spreads or pages of your publications with that access control that we were talking about. So individual people can access different parts of different publications on a case-by-case basis. Here's a nice quote about MasterPlan. So we had a review earlier this year. I'll let you read that. MasterPlan provides a reading experience, but also those access controls that are needed. And this is a posting of that same quote as a link on Twitter. So if I actually click on this, I'm going to step outside of the presentation and actually go to Twitter to see this link. And I'm going to follow this. You see it says view this publication via our website. If I click on there, it's actually going to take me, open up a new browser window. Let me just close some of these others and show me that page of the publication that has been shared using MasterPlan. So we're actually using MasterPlan to talk about an article on MasterPlan. The text is all live. I can go between different pages. This is actually a PDF. It has live links on there, which I go to follow, and it's zoomable and shareable. So by sharing this particular link on different platforms, this is how we got to create that link on Twitter. So it can overlay on top of an existing website. I'll put a link to where this is in the video. But also, it doesn't have to be taking people to us. That's the important thing. You would be able to post your own content into your own site. So here's an example that we mocked up for Macmillan, where we would have on their site the buy button that is offering to purchase, and it could very much be used as a way to support the sale of a physical book. But by clicking this button, you can see it's actually overlaying on top a MasterPlan. It's nicely responsive, so I can change the size of the spread thumbnails depending on the size of my screen, and if I have a smaller screen, it will show me different size content. But if I click on a particular page, you can see here we've got that individual spread level access control, so I can't see that page, and we could also change the watermark. We can switch this off, so hide it completely. But basically, if I click on this spread here, it's going to open up again, this is a PDF. We'll get to some EPUB stuff in a moment, but as I'm on page 22, as I go to the next page, can you see down there, I've gone to page 26. I've gone straight past the content that hasn't been sent, and that's important. It's not hidden from the reader, it's actually not sent. So the concept of streaming this content into a nice structured document, which can be presented to the reader for them to then go on and share that content, and we can control it to, like I was saying, to the second. I've got a lot more. I don't want to turn this into a training video, but I could show, for example, if I wanted to. I'm just using another screen here to go into the admin mode. I'm just going to save what I'm doing over something you can't see, but I'll go through that in another video. But basically, I can at this moment choose to unlock or lock different parts of this publication, and as soon as the reader is brought to this page, they get to see that individual content on a to the second or to the minute, really, to the basis of who is looking at that content and what they can see based on who they are and what is allowed at that moment. So it lends itself to a book like this. Has got lots of nicely designed recipes which you don't want to give away because you're trying to sell the content, but wouldn't it be great to allow people to dip into the book at different places? And if you could have it time-based and shareable on social media, this could easily be the recipe of the day or the tip of the week, etc. And it's just taking this great content, and rather than just presenting the cover and saying, here's the cover, now go and buy the book, isn't that a great way to pull people back to the site that it was shared from, and also to control exactly what can be viewed? So I've got some other examples. Let me just switch browsers. Here we go. So what if there was lots of titles? Here's an example of, I think, 40. And if I was to click on one of these, I can go straight in at a click to some of my spreads. Again, I can just go in at a click to actually open up that individual spread. So it took a second there to download because you can see it's streaming that content. There's a little bit more zoom I can do. It's nicely full screen, and I can just switch between these spreads if I'm allowed to. And remember, you could restrict the access as much as you can open up the access. So we can have a whole list or library of books that you could, still use to sell the physical book, allow people to get inside the book, share that content out socially, or you could have a different model entirely. You could allow people to subscribe to the library of all of these books. Different people can have different access, and as we've said before, to different publications, different pages, different times. It's a different way to supply this content, and these are actually JPEGs. So the content that we've looked at is PDF or JPEG, and also for PDFs, I've got another example. Let me just remind myself where it is. Let's have a look at this one. So for the InDesign magazine, they are the first major customer of MasterPlan. It's quite new, and within their catalogue of over 120 different magazines, we've got this concept that we can actually search. So being able to search from outside of the magazine and outside of an individual publication is really powerful, especially I think for perhaps non-fiction reference material. So if I do a search on perhaps TextWrap, it will look through all of the magazines, and TextWrap is something particular to InDesign, so I knew it would be in there. Oh yes, and these pages are also locked down, so only where there is an unlocked page. So you can see they were allowing the search and for people to see where this content is mentioned. So on page 5 it will be mentioned, but on page 12 it's mentioned and it's locked down. So if we go into a particular publication, let's just go into maybe this one. It will show us the spreads, but at a certain point, using their own watermark, that spread is locked down. Where these are again PDFs which are being displayed in this secure way. So we've got a nice way to search through an entire back catalogue of content and present it in this way. We could also, there's another way to actually drop in. Let me go to this one. So you can see here, rather than an overlay, you can actually be made part of the web page. So they've got a web page around it, but here is this content which is in here. So I can take a particular look at a particular page of the spread within this website, and this doesn't have to be our website. This is just a demonstration piece. It could be the InDesign magazine website, or it could be anywhere that the InDesign magazine want their content to be placed. So for the cookery example earlier, that could be the author could put it on their site. It could be the illustrator or the photographer, the publisher themselves, but it could also be a partner. It could be a supermarket could have the tip of the week and recipe of the day in their own website if the publisher allows them. So we have this nice way to show the content, just the content that we want, to just the people that we want, or just part of a publication to everybody, or certain people get everything, or it can be really access controlled down to the person and the page and the minute, as I said. Okay, let me show you another one. So this is another children's publisher, and I've used this one because these are all EPUBs. So this is a fixed layer EPUB. This is the Kids Can Press publisher that gave us that nice quote earlier. So and on their EPUBs, using circular flow, they've actually used read aloud, so the media overlays to highlight individual pieces of text. So let's try this out.
This is Steve. Steve is a fine horse, but he thinks he could be finer. He wants to be exceptional. That means special.
So that is it's a nice looking but quite simple example of how this interactive content from a fixed layout EPUB can be placed into a searchable library, which can be placed into any site that the publisher would want that to be placed into. So it's not just for children's stuff. The final example I'll give is this one. So for information that is best shown in an illustrative way, it could be infographics, it could be maps, it could be complex scientific research. So this sort of presentation, I've picked on one here that is from a book. It's called the Women's Atlas, published by Myriad Press and Penguin. So it's talking about important information about serious medical topics and political topics, etc. Within this book. So it's just another use of illustrated publishing. Just trying to get the point across that it's not just for children. Okay, let me finish off by going back to the presentation and saying that MasterPlan is a web app, as you've seen working. There's plenty more I could share you in another session. It's also a desktop app, so we have an application that uploads, and I'll put a link to a video I've done of that as well. So it's a very quick way to take existing content either from InDesign or from PDF or EPUB and upload that to MasterPlan securely. It has a full API, so all of the tools, the desktop tools and the web app are actually using an API. So programmatically we can control the access, and we can set up users, and oh yes, we've also got a WordPress plugin. So for the concept of a subscription site, if you have a members list on WordPress, we've already got a plugin that links directly from WordPress's members and subscribers to allow the content on your WordPress site, and that too is using the API. So we've done it in a scalable and robust manner. So MasterPlan is the solution, I believe, to the problems that I've presented in the first part of this session. So just to say, I'm Ken Jones. You can reach me on Twitter and on email, and this is our company website. So thank you very much for listening and viewing. Please do get in touch if you would like to have a free trial, or just find out more, or just discuss this stuff, or disagree with me, or just let's have a chat about this sort of thing, because it's something I'm very passionate about, and I've been trying to do for many years, and I think finally we have the product that could take this to a serious place. So I'm going to sign off and say thank you for listening, and I hope to speak to you again at some point.